Let's see, maybe I can control you.
David, you can't hold contact.
Oh, yeah.
We just got a new puppy.
I don't have the app for it. She married yet?
We're good? All right. What you need? Yep. You look like you're on a mission. Huh?
Blink your eyes and they're gone.
Yes, I do. Different dates of the upcoming state.
Oh, well, you can talk about that. All right, everybody. Paul back there is saying it's 6:30. So I guess it's time. So, hi. How's it going? Okay. I'm looking around and I'm not seeing a lot of antennas.
I got one in the car.
Okay. All right. Because I know it's nice and cool and everybody wants to go outside, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to get up and we're going to take this out. No, not right now. So we're doing something different today. We're actually live streaming on YouTube. So if anybody was in the Google group, you should have got the email that said so. I figure if you're here, you didn't get that message or you would have stayed home. Jack is going to be monitoring the stream and see if anybody actually joins or asks questions and lets us know. So this is a complete experiment. First time we've done it. When that survey came out back in October, whatever it was, quite a few people said that they would like to see it live streamed somehow or the other because they just couldn't drive at night and couldn't get here on Mondays or what have you. So we're giving it a whirl. We'll see what happens. Anything fun happened since the last time we met? Anybody? Anywhere? Lots of storms. I lost my HF antenna. I haven't got that back up yet. Yeah.
My 40-meter dipole and my 40-meter delta loop and my fan dipole came down.
Yep.
Thanks to a big tree.
Yep. Mine was a bunch of trees.
Yeah. Our fan dipole blew on the other dipole.
All right. Well, let's, I guess, get started. And anybody got any questions from like years past or meeting past or anything before we get started? Nope. Okay. So originally, back a couple months ago, we talked about doing a fox hunt, and I was going to have someone come in and give this presentation. And he lives down in Fayetteville or something like that, so getting up here is a little difficult. So he actually said that I could give the presentation, but I want to go ahead and say it's his presentation and I'm just talking. I've added a few slides, highlighted a few things, but it's really his. So Joe Domaleski, KI4ASK, has actually given this to his club. He's given it at Huntsville and several different places. There's a couple of YouTube videos that there are links at the end. So when you leave here and you don't understand what I've said, you can go watch his videos and figure out what he actually intended for you to do. Has anybody here actually done any fox hunting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice. Okay. Well, then this should be.
It was more hunting for interference.
Same difference, right?
Yeah.
Well, something unusual when, what frequency were you guys doing it at Yoda up at Voice of America?
Yeah, we're doing 80-meter fox hunting up at Yoda.
Oh my gosh. Okay. From what kind of distance?
From here to there.
Interesting. Okay. Huh.
We just go around the whole area, try to find small transmitters set up in gullies, streams, bushes. So, yeah.
Okay. Haven't actually heard of fox hunting on 80, so
Yeah,
that's a new one.
They had to build the receiver as a kit,
Uh-huh.
and with a ferrite antenna. And the guy who designed it had all these really good reasons why 80 meters is great for fox hunting. But I can't remember a single one. I'm not sure he was right. But
Yeah. Huh. I don't know. Okay, so what is fox hunting? Basically, fox hunting is using a receiver and antenna and trying to find either a hidden transmitter or a source of noise, or you're hunting for something that's transmitting. So it's a whole lot like geocaching. Has anyone here done geocaching? All right, geocaching is a lot of fun. So basically somebody will hide something out in the woods or around someplace and they'll give you the GPS coordinates. Use a handheld GPS to go try to find that. When my kids were littler, they used to call that treasure hunting because usually there's a box with some little toys in it or whatever. You take something and you leave something. This is kind of like that, except it's a transmitter that's hidden. Now Joe says that it's like geocaching and it's like scavenger hunt and orienteering. Scavenger hunt, maybe. Orienteering, for what we're going to be doing. Now, I also teach map and compass for the scouts, so I teach orienteering. I wouldn't necessarily call what we're going to do today orienteering because we're not going to break out maps and compass. But if there's enough interest and we want to do a bigger event at some point, we could actually do something where maps and compass might come in handy. We'll touch on that a little bit, but if anybody wants to take that aside and go over maps and compass, just give me a shout. Requires very simple direction finding equipment. You don't need an antenna quite like you got laying there, Fred.
I don't know
that looks really cool.
That's why I came to this.
Yeah, so those that came the other month, we had field day in between. But so some of us built these little tape measure Yagis. Those are nice and cheap. And then since then, I found a plan for a loop in QST a couple months ago. So I've been playing with that. So cheap is good. It's actually a sport. You can get awards with it. There's not a whole lot of skills needed. Yada, yada, yada. And the other good reason is anybody can do it. So this is a bunch of scouts for an event that we did up in January, and all of them are smiling. They all found the fox. We had it just hidden in a windshield of a car in a parking lot because where we were, there was a bunch of big buildings and parking lots. But so we literally gave them this type of setup and about, a minute and a half worth of instructions and said, go to it. And most of them found it. So, you can make it as easy or as hard as you want. Last Friday, up in Dawsonville, they had this Dawson County Family Fun Festival or whatever it was. And they had a bunch of vendors come out, popcorn and a movie in the square. Well, the Boy Scouts set up a thing with some tents and some different things going on. Well, I drug out the transmitter and the antenna. And so I put the transmitter where the scouts were, and I walked out into the field, and whenever somebody would give me this funny look, that's when I'd be like, hey, have you ever done a fox hunt, And so I had everything from adults to teenagers. No joke, I had a 5- and 6-year-old sisters find the fox from all the way across the field. And the littlest one, they were fighting over who was going to hold the antenna. The little one won. And when she went to hold it, she's like, it's too heavy, so anyway. But they found it, so that was really cool. So why is it so much fun? Being outdoors, particularly when it's cooler. Social aspect, you can do it as a team. You can do it as a competition. There could be awards or what have you. Just bragging rights. You don't need any kind of special license. You don't have to be a ham. Anybody that can run a receiver, a scanner, build an antenna, buy an antenna. There's not a whole lot that's really needed. You can spend boatload of money buying active differential antennas and all kinds of equipment to do this stuff. But just to get started and have fun, you don't have to do that. Exercise, again, not when it's 100 degrees outside, but so those are some reasons why to do it. It's an important skill because you can actually use it to find crashed airplanes, search and rescue, wildlife beacons. How many of you used to watch Mutual of Omaha and they would tag some of the animals and you'd see the guy, and I don't remember his name, but he'd be riding in the big bubble helicopter with an antenna hanging out the side. They'd be trying to find where the animals went. Distress signals, when boats go down, the EPIRBs, finding those, locating jammers, illegal transmissions, all that kind of good fun stuff. Also, finding noise around the house and neighborhood. So I've used it to find electrical power poles that were popping, setting off lots of noise, and a electric dog fence a few neighbors down. So it comes in handy for that.
Is that you?
No. No, that's not me. Actually, like I said, these are all Joe's pictures and everything, so you'll see a lot of he and his wife in here too. Speaking of, that's them. So the basic fox hunting equipment, you need the fox transmitter. Happens to be one hidden somewhere around here today. He calls it the sniffer. I just say the receiver, an antenna used to, a directional antenna that you can use so that you can find a direction. And an attenuator comes in really handy so that you can kill the strength. But there's some other things that you can do if you don't have an attenuator. And if you got questions, fire away. So basic equipment, transmitter. It can be a build it yourself. I think a few months ago I brought in a Pi powered thing that I'd connected to a Bofang. And even with a crummy antenna, you could still pick that up several miles away. So it was a little strong, but it's functional. If we were going to do something where I don't tell you where it's hidden and you're just supposed to find it in the county, you could use something like that maybe. But for something like this, it would be entirely too strong. He refers to the daddy, the high power versus the baby low power. So the Bofang would be high power. What I've got out there running now is similar to the little 35 millimeter case, camera film case. It's a 15 milliwatt, I think it is. So it'll run a long time on a 9-volt battery. Hey Jack, do we have anybody watching?
We have Rin watching. That's about it.
Ah, okay.
Audrey's watching.
Audrey's watching. Yeah.
Okay.
And Jen.
So everybody wave.
Hey.
Okay. So let's see. The radio. You could use a scanner. You can use an HT. What you really need is something that's got a signal strength meter. And honestly, I don't know how badly you really need that because you can listen to the static. And that's what I tell the kids is, when you turn the antenna around, listen for the clearest signal. Clearest signal is where you want to go. BNC connector is really handy. I don't have anything with a BNC connector on the HT, but when you get really close in, you can use the HT and actually take the antenna off and use your body. We'll talk about all that. But so BNC is nice for taking the antenna on and off or swapping antennas. Just some pictures of Joe and his wife. They're building tape measure antennas. So basic equipment, the simple VHF Yagi, that's what this is. How many of y'all were here and made one of these or have one of these? Not as many as I thought, okay. So, this is about $20, $25 worth of pieces, parts. Really super simple to build. I went backwards. I added a link to the Sarah antenna build instructions. So those are the instructions that we had the night we built them with a QR code. So if you wanted to go build one of these, you could. And basically, don't forget the Yagi basically listens. That's how I tell the kids anyway. Is it listens better in that direction, listens a little less better towards the back, and doesn't listen as well off the sides. And I know y'all know a little bit more about gain, but that's how I describe it anyway. So using the Yagi, something that happened for the first time Friday that I thought was pretty handy was I had my HT and just a little rubber duck, and so the Fox, it transmits and then it's got a 15-second delay. Well, using the attenuator, I'd kill a signal some or what have you, and then we really weren't sure if the kids were, well, I knew if they were pointing in the right place, but they weren't sure if they just weren't picking up the signal or if they were just pointing in the wrong place or if it was the 15-second delay. Well, with just the general HT, I could tell really easy they were pointing in the wrong place. It was still transmitting. Thought that was handy. All right, so a loop antenna. So this is really good for a distance. So you can, yeah, I didn't draw that. From a distance, the Yagi is really good. We were using it across basically a football field size area, but I mean, you could use it several miles depending on the size of the, or the power of the transmitter. When you start getting in a little closer, so this was in QST a couple months ago. Yeah, like 2 months ago. And there's a loop there, there's a link there and a QR code on how to get there if you wanted to make it. It is literally so simple. It's a 8-inch diameter, I don't know, 12 gauge piece of wire, and there's nothing but 2 pieces of coax run through here. I got a hot glued in there, so I won't pull it out. But that's all there is to it. There's nothing active. And using it, so if you're the transmitter and I'm pointing this direction, you're going to hear it. And then when I turn it this way, you don't hear it anymore. I was playing with it here before everybody started, and it wasn't hearing anything. But I know it actually works because we used it Friday. So it's definitely better for closer in. Attenuator. So that's a handy thing to have. That's what this box is. There's active attenuators. And he's got a picture of that. Oh yeah, down here on the bottom right. You can buy those for about $50. Kits for about $15. This was about $30. We've got several of them that we use with the Scouts. The switches, you turn them up and you can add attenuation. And so you just keep adding until you knock down the signal to where you can get more of a direction. And yeah. Any questions? Everybody know what the attenuators do?
I have
Yeah.
that question,
Okay. So yeah, the attenuator, basically think of it as a big resistor.
Right.
And it cuts down on the signal. So
So it helps
yeah.
me isolate it when I get close.
yeah. So if we were, and I am using a Bofang, because that way when the kids break it, I don't cry. And it must not be going yet. Yeah. So that's with no attenuation. Oh wow. That's actually working pretty good. So it's nulling off the side. It's still hearing it a little bit in the back and stronger that way. Huh? That's a little red one. It's a little hairy, a little fuzzy. Yeah.
I've never heard one that was so joyous.
Yeah.
What's the frequency?
I'm not going to tell you that yet. So, but as you add attenuation, that signal, the pan that you can make will get to the point where you can, be a little more exact. But I don't want to show you where it is. So that's what the attenuator does. And if you get one of the active ones, I don't have one. But if you get one, he's got a video on YouTube on how to use it. It's pretty good video. Like I said, you can buy the kit for like $15 off eBay, or buy one for $50 with the ends and box.
About
Hmm?
$30.
What, Amazon?
Handy finder,
Ah, yeah.
this thing.
And so with the antennas like that, that's called what is it? TD. Help me out. That's it. So basically it's 2 antennas and it's a circuit so that when both antennas are kind of equal in pointing, then it makes a certain sound or such. I don't have one. I hadn't played with it. I've just read about it. But when you get the antennas, at a different angle, the sound changes, and so you can use that to pick identify direction as well. Since he says it here, if you don't have a attenuator, if you don't have the box, just turning off the frequency a little bit, up or down, will help. That'll give you a little attenuation, and then you can zero in a little bit better. Your squelch, using your squelch will help.
What was
That's it.
RSSI? What was that?
I don't know what that stands for, but it's basically he's saying when you get so close that even with an antenna off, the radio is going to pick it, and the meter's still going to be pegged.
Receive signal strength indication.
That's it.
Bar graph.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But when it saturates, it's saturated, and you can't, if it saturates at -70, you can't tell if it's -72 or because the saturation, not a sharp edge.
Right.
It'll smooth out as it gets up in there.
You lost your dynamic range.
That's right.
Okay, so 3-step technique for finding the fox. For here, you're not going to have to use, a map and compass and what all. But, if we were going to have a bigger event and you don't know where it is, it's just somewhere in Forsyth County, that might be a little much. Probably give you a little, more of a hint than that. But you'd use a compass and the Yagi. You'd go to one particular place. You'd find a direction, whatever it is. You'd use your compass and find the bearing and add that to a map, right? So that would be one line. There's a way to do this. It wasn't that one. It's that one. So, if you're standing there and you use the Yagi pointing this way, and that's the closest or the strongest signal you get, you mark that down, draw your line, and then if you go to another location and shoot another one, you don't know if it's back this way from bearing 1. You don't know if it's this way or this way, depending on the antenna you're using. But you don't know how far it is anywhere along through here. So you go pick another bearing, and where they cross, it gets you close, closer. So do, 3 or more of those, and that'll get you in the general area. So he's got another video on how to take a bearing and how to plot it on a map. So one thing about radio, you might know this, signals bounce. So like when we were doing the fox hunt with the scouts in January, there was lots of cars, it was kind of big warehouse buildings. So, and when we would start on the side of the building, and the fox is actually hid way out here, and so when you first started, you would pick up signals and it looked like it was coming from that direction. It was bouncing off of a big hill because we were up in Gatlinburg. And so once they got a little bit further, then they were able to figure out, oh wait, it's actually this way. But so studying your map, knowing where your hills are, your valleys. So this is going to be a mountain right here. So there can be some reflection off that. You can tell by the contour lines. Start from high ground. So the higher you are, the better you can see the horizon, the further that you can get a signal. So you get your good first signal, pay attention to reflected, and plot the bearing. Go to another place and find another bearing. Take multiple bearings, need at least 2, probably need, I'd say at least 3. This is where it would be good, team type hunting, because if something was hidden in the county and Rick lives north of us, I live over, here near downtown, I don't know where anybody else lives, but someone lives over that way, you could actually take 3 bearings, meet at the repeater, on the repeater, compare notes, and then all meet up where you kind of think it is. If you just get one bearing, it's probably not the greatest idea just to start heading in that direction, except today, because it's nice and close. And, so it's going to be relatively easy to find, I hope. This Fox Hunt Pro, I've not seen it because I think that's, wrong way. I think that's only an Android app. I couldn't find it in the iPhone and the Apple Store. So that's something that you could, look at if you've got Android. Triangulating, yep, so that works better when the fox is far away. Once you get close in, then you're not going to be able to do that as easily. So this was an event that they did. He hid the more powerful, daddy fox, and people were told, so they actually had a starting point. and they were told to go out and look for it. So they went different places, took different bearings, compared notes, figured out that the daddy fox was about here, but when they got close enough to it, then they were able to start hearing the lesser powered baby fox. And just another example. Oh, so this one's funny. So baby fox was on VHF, started on high ground, got a good first and second bearing, took a third bearing right next to the fox and didn't know it. Drove away, took another bearing, and then realized needed to go back to where they were, and then found it. So sometimes if you can't find it, walking away and shooting back is actually another way of handling it. If you're getting a strong signal, no matter where you point the antenna, it means you're close. Okay. If you take the antenna off the radio and you're still getting a strong signal, you're really close. So when you get really close, that's when you really need to attenuate the signal. You can, when it gets to the point where the Yagi or even the loop's not helping, if you just use your HT and take the antenna off, or hold the antenna on it, hold it close to your body and spin around, wherever you start to hear the most static, your back is pointing to it. And when you hear the strongest signal, it's somewhere in front of you. You take the antenna off, and that gives it a little more attenuation. You can still do the same thing. You can still tune off frequency a little bit. So tuning off frequency, using your body, turning around, taking the antenna off. Those are things that you would do when you get a little closer to help zero in. Then when you really get close, you forget using the radio and you start looking around. Get down?
I can give you some absolute proof that what you just said really works. When Jack and Audrey dropped a balloon payload down by Statesboro, we were pretty sure we knew where it was based on GPS, APRS, all that stuff. But you could still be a half mile away. We had two 7-centimeter beacons, two in case one failed, and they were about 4 megahertz apart, and we knew it was down on the ground somewhere, but they ended up doing exactly what you said. We didn't realize how close we were, but the signal strength told us we were really close, and we were pegging the RSSI meter, and so I was watching Audrey. She's walking around and she did this, and she unscrewed the antenna, and then all of a sudden I turned to go put my boots on, and she was gone. And by the time I had my boots on, she was running to me. Her and Jack had a parachute in her hands. Yeah. And and that was so why what you're saying, that was this. What would you say, Jack, from the van to where the barbed wire fence was?
Probably about 500 feet.
Okay.
500 feet at 70 centimeters, and it was body blocking, got you right on. And I never knew, when she was a little girl, I told Audrey and Jack, if you ever have to jump over a barbed wire fence, find an old piece of carpet, throw it over, and I saw it 13. And sure enough, she had an opportunity to do that, because it was behind a barbed wire fence at a peanut processing plant. That body blocking worked really well in your field.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, so some general tips. Follow clues, signal strength, direction, terrain. Definitely signal strength, terrain. Pay attention, cars, buildings, things that would reflect RF. Be familiar with your equipment and its limitations. Okay, I'm using a Bofang. I've got my Yaesus. They have better signal strength meter on them. You can definitely tell a difference when you're using it. But like I said, if the kids break the Bofangs, I don't care. Bearings are rarely more accurate than 20 degrees. So, if the strongest signal's this way, yeah, it's that way, So you have to go off a little bit more and work your way in as you get closer. Discard bearings that don't make sense. So if you get a bearing that says you got to cross the road today, yeah, that's not right, because you don't have to cross the road and you don't have to go through, you don't have to bushwhack either. So that's keeping things simple. VHF's mostly line of sight, but there can be reflections, multipath signals. Last few hundred feet, that's definitely going to be the hardest. You know, so if the repeater is IDing and you use your Yagi to, you know, figure out the direction of it, it's going to be really easy to point to the repeater and figure out which direction it is. But the Fox, without an attenuator, without turning off or, you know, frequency or something, it's a little tougher. Once you finally get there, you got to use your eyes. You just got to look and have fun.
Do you know what frequencies you're gonna be using? I mean, that's a broad, you know.
So
Give you a, okay.
I'll give it to you. Yeah. So the suggested resources. So this is, you know, Joe. So the DX antenna, the loop antenna there came from DX.
Engineering?
Thank you, DX Engineering. Like I said, mine is just literally out of QST, scrap coax, and a piece of wire. If anybody wants to use it, you're welcome to. I think that runs about $50. This was, you know, junk out of my junk bin. The transmitter hunting radio, that book, you know, I will never say that you can find the PDF online, because that would be like, you know, not nice, borderline piracy. But if you look, you never know what you might find. And that is that is like the Bible of fox hunting. It has circuits, antennas, theory. That is a fantastic book. You can buy it used for like $8 from the used bookstores. So you might as well buy a copy. Later on, I'll send these out, but these are the 2 videos that Joe made, Fox Hunting 101, 102. They're like 10 minutes each, 15 minutes each. He does a really good job, so they're worth watching. All right. Now, who wants to play instead of listening to me? Yes, everybody, right? Okay, so here's a couple of tips. So the main frequency of the Fox is 146,565. So Hugh, that answers your question. Okay? So if you tune your radios to 146,565, you should start hearing the Fox. One of the other things that you can use when you start getting closer is the harmonics. Okay, so if you just have a general receiver, you know, that'll do the second harmonic, which is 293,313. It's, you know, just multiplied by 2. That's not in the amateur band, so you don't want to transmit there. I don't know what that is there, but that's why you want, you know, a nice clean transmitter. There it is. The third harmonic falls nicely into the UHF realm, and so, you know, this is a little UHF Yagi. It's literally, you know, wire and coax. You can use it. There's nothing saying you can't use the VHF Yagi as well. That's typically what I do. So you can use your squelch as an attenuator. The Yagi, don't forget, you know, how it works. You can tune slightly up or down, tuning off the main frequency of either one to add attenuation. If you have any kind of attenuator, you know, whether it be the box or what have you, use that when you start getting closer. Use rubber duck, use your body to find the null. Also, when you're swinging the Yagi around, I'll use this one because it's easier. Don't forget, you know, you don't know if the Fox, the antenna is pointing up, horizontal, diagonal, you don't know where it is. So, you know, spin it, it's like shooting for satellites. You know, they tumble. So as you're panning, turn it around, because if you're 90 degrees out, you're losing about 20 decibels of signal, which you can use to your advantage, because that's attenuation. So if you figure out it's louder this way, turn it 90 degrees to help kill a little bit more of the signal when you get closer. And once you finally get to where you just can't tell with the antenna, start looking. Any questions? Yep.
So Lynn, you said on the, did I hear correctly, on your loop antenna, did you say you had 2 pieces of coax?
Yeah, I literally copied the design right out of QST. It was just a little section. That link will take you there. It is a piece of coax that goes, you know, center to one side, shield to the other side, runs through, and then you have a 19-inch piece of additional coax. Basically, it's acting as a capacitor because you tie the shield and center each together, and then it goes from this side to shield. So I don't know what the value is because I don't have a capacitor meter, but I'm sure you could use a capacitor instead. I don't know. I just built it.
What's the number on the coax?
Uh,
RG8?
I think this is 58.
Oh, 58.
Yeah, this is just something I picked up. The design, the article said that you could use 50 ohm, 75 ohm. Yeah, I just used this because I had it handy.
Okay.
And it does work.
Yeah, well, it's
So.
like a tuned circuit capacitor
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
Probably 18 to 20 some picofarad for 19 inches of coax.
it's whatever the coax is gonna be, really.
No, I'm just gonna make a comment. Knowing the principles of fox hunting is pretty important. I'm just putting some historic value in it. My wife's grandfather was part of the Dutch resistance, and he was an amateur radio operator. And when the Germans came in, they made all the amateur radio operators register all their radios. So he took his best one and he hid it, and he registered his other radios. Well, of course, registration is always a precursor to confiscation. So they confiscated all the radios, and he was part of the Dutch resistance. So I think he had actually kept 2 or 3 different radios because he had like most hams, he had the multiple radios. And so he gave up his crappiest, but he'd already pre-hid all the other radios. So he had places he would stash, but when he would get an order to transmit, something, towards Britain, he would make the transmission, or half the transmission, and then he'd move, and then he'd make the other transmission, and that move always would screw up the Germans, because they would always try to triangulate on his signal, and they could never get him,
Yeah.
because he'd be between...
If he stayed in one place, he was
Correct.
setting duck.
They famously had loop antennas on the roof of their vehicles.
Correct. And so he, and I've been actively trying to find his Dutch call sign, but it's interesting because if you know the principles of fox hunting, then you know the principles to thwart it if that ever becomes a thing.
Yeah.
Never become a thing.
Oh yeah.
All right. So that's all of this. The rest is, get with somebody that's got an antenna. You're welcome to use any of this. Yeah, Fred.
Could you go back a slide so I can see the name of the author, or do you know the author?
Oh, the book? Joseph D. Moell? Moell?
We'll have access to this deck or not?
Yeah, I'll send it out. I may actually take out the scout pictures, though. I don't like just putting out, pictures of the scouts, but
Lynn?
yeah.
Can you go to the slide with the frequencies on it? So
Yeah.
just a comment.
Mhm.
For me, I've never done this fox hunting, but given that information, you're really halfway there. Because, if you had to start from 0, in other words, you don't know what frequency, what band, that's more than...
Oh, yeah.
You're given a lot of information here. Now the rest is your equipment and
Yeah.
some experience.
That assumes
Yeah.
you know how to dial it in on one of these newfangled radios. Without
Yeah.
using a programming software package.
Well, they should be portable, so they should be easy, all right?
Mm.
That's just my comment, But
Oh, when we do it with the scouts, I just hand them a locked radio, so they can't transmit, they can't change anything. But I don't even talk about changing the frequency off or anything else. They just find it with a basically dead set on the frequency and the Yagi, and they go to it.
That's the truth.
Mhm.
A lot of, you were asking about finding the frequency and everything. I was using packet back home, and I was receiving a lot of interference at one time, and I couldn't figure out why. I put the little handheld, and I went out trying to find it, thinking it was away from the house, and it pointed back to the house. I said, well, why did it change? Nothing has changed in my house, everything was the same. And then I found out later, by going through the house with the radio, that it was outside on my electric meter. They had just put in the new kind of electric meters that transmitted the signal to the road so that the guy could pass by and never have to go into the yard. So I ended up calling those people up, and they came and they changed out the meter about 5 times before they finally found one that wasn't transmitting on the ham bands.
Well, how did you find the original frequency?
Well, it was packet. It was a packet frequency.
I see, okay.
So, I mean, if you're getting problems with your radio somewhere inside the house or something, then you know that you've got, that frequency.
What frequency was it?
It was packet. I don't remember what it was,
VHF
126 something.
Oh, is that 2 meters somewhere?
So,
Okay.
and like I said, it was interfering with my packet, and I went outside and finally figured it out. And Lynn has done the same thing with electric poles arcing.
Yeah, it's just an easy phone call to them. Most of them, they switch it out to a meter that does, instead of the smart meters, instead of it transmitting to the road, now they're using power over Ethernet power, and so they just send it right through the power line.
All right. Yeah.
2 things to keep in mind. Most of the RF output sections in low-priced radios are Class C. So their harmonic content, if there is any, that doesn't get eaten off by the filters, most of the harmonic content will always be in the odd harmonic. So an even harmonic, you may have troubles with that. So figure 3rd or 5th, if it has any significant harmonic content. The other thing is on the RSSI indications on the front of your radio, these are slowed down or dumbed down, take your pick, to avoid the effects of what we call Rayleigh fading, which is the fluttering as you move a small distance. As you drive down the road, your meter may do a little bit of this, but it's not doing what's really happening, which is just all over the place.
Some hysteresis.
Yeah, well, hysteresis, but also just slow it down so that you take a longer term average of the thing. So I've seen people with directional antennas looking for an interference source, or Fox in this case, and when they identify the thing, they go whip, 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 whip.
Yes.
And they're looking at the RSSI meter, and the thing barely changes, so they walk right past it.
Yes.
So slow down a little bit, get an actual peak or an actual null on the thing. Just slow down just a little bit, it'll be there. Because otherwise you may fall into the trap of thinking the RSSI is accurately recording things to you. And if it's slowed down semi-properly, you'll be past it before it peaks. It'll be an error peak. It'll be off 20 degrees or so if you're moving about this speed. So just some thoughts.
No, that's good tips. Yeah. And I noticed, because the first time I actually used this was Friday at that Dawsonville thing, and I noticed it has a very, very sharp null. So if you're just going, just like that, you're just going to go right over it. So you got to go pretty darn slow until you find it. So I thought that was kind of cool. All right, ready, break. No questions from the internet? No? All right. How many did we actually have watching? Just
About 6.
really? Okay. Very cool. All right, so we can shut that off and everybody can go out into the 100-degree heat. Okay, so it's cooled off.